Right,
Um,
right.
yeah,
Well,
for
very
sure.
good. Well, I've been looking forward to meeting you and doing this for a month, and I just love the I love the way you approach things,
Thank you.
and I appreciate the what you're looking for, that kind of thing. I'm ready to go whenever you're ready to
Okay.
go, and I am willing to share a lot about the little I know. So
Okay. I love it. And I will too. So, Martin, it's great to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
yeah, it's my pleasure.
So let's begin our journey with this. I always start with this question because it was such a pivotal point in our history. COVID, 6 years ago, changed everything. How did you get through it, and how has it changed the way that you work and live today?
Well, I during COVID was actually very challenging. But however, I had manufactured a product called Ozark River portable sinks. They were self-contained hot water hand washing stations. So I had the right product where everybody else was getting shut down. We were amplifying, right? But I got to tell you, at the beginning of that, when COVID hit, it like sucked the air out of everything, and it sent chills through the whole entrepreneur community and the world, obviously, in many different ways. For us, we were a manufacturer, so we needed people on staff. So it threw a tizzy into everything. However, at the end of it, I have to tell you, we grew by 238%.
Wow.
And the reality of that is that it took intentional design to get people to come in, let them know they were doing meaningful work, pushing forward. But it did suck the air out of everything. But once we got our feet, we started running. We pivoted the company, Joe. We had 35 different products. We pivoted down to four, and the orders started coming in, and we were able to, I guess, save the world.
There you go. With somebody, we needed Superman somewhere. So I want to lead up to When Doubt Becomes Design, the new book. And I want to do that by kind of peeling back some layers of your life. So I want to begin with the question of being in front of a bunch of 13-year-olds at career day. And one of the kids wants you to give them a snapshot of your career. They want to know what your day job is and how you got here. How do you explain your job existence to those kids?
Well, I've always been a founder, and it's kind of interesting when you're a founder or an entrepreneur, you get labeled a CEO. I'm not so sure small companies need a CEO, but they certainly need vision. So one thing that I've always brought to the table was recognizing a problem to solve and how to solve it. I really do believe that's the entrepreneur's journey. Simon Sinek said something very smart, and he said that when your why or your passion is the bridge to getting where you want to go, money is the result of that. So the idea is that entrepreneurs don't exist to make money, but we exist to solve a problem. And so my everyday life is making sure teams are aligned, that we have good, meaningful work, that we're solving problems every day, and doing the things that we set forth to do. And Joe, if I could just say this, I think the top three things that a CEO should do is number one, have the vision for the company, let everybody know where we're going to be going. Number two is to communicate that vision to their company. And I guess that would be one A and one B, because number two is speak to the heart of the people. And the only way you can speak to the heart of people is by knowing them. So get to know your team. And number three is have nine no's to one yes. What that means is that once that vision is set and we've set the sail, we've set the direction, great ideas come out, right? Everybody, you have a good creative team. Everybody is pushing forward in one direction. We got good line of sight. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that when people come up with really good ideas and they don't align with the current vision, we put them in a parking lot. We set them aside. We don't dissolve them. We don't throw them in the trash. We put them in a parking lot. So the next time we do set a strategy meeting, that those are the forefront of which we start with. That is the basis of the foundation. And I think that if, as leaders, if we could do that as a CEO, set that direction, speak to everybody accordingly, and make sure that we're not getting misdirected, I think that you do the company a huge service.
So, were you destined to be an entrepreneur, to be a founder? Take me back to when you were in that seat at Career Day. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was the dream
Mm.
gig?
Well, back in sixth grade, when I grew up, you took a little career test, right? You got the number two pencil out. It was a special day. We're going to find out who you are, and we sat down and filled it all out. And uh, my number one occupation actually was advertising executive in
Wow.
sixth grade.
Okay.
And my second one was an artist or an art teacher, but it was an advertising executive in sixth grade. And I never really, like my idea was Darren from Bewitched, like he did the pitches, he did that. It was came from television, I guess,
Yeah.
advertising executive. But it was interesting is that the journey that I took, truly, Jolie, was when I got fired from a job. I literally got fired from my last job. I never took another W-2 again. I got fired. I just realized that I didn't fit the molds. I can't say that I was at that point. I was born an entrepreneur. It was out of necessity. I had to make $425 a month for rent, and I
Yeah.
figured I could draw and sell my drawings, those kind of things. And I actually became a technical illustrator, and that led to more things and growing the skill sets. And believe it or not, at one point I owned an ad agency,
Oh.
and I used all of those skill sets that I grew to to as I grew into each position. I think that's the best way to say it. As I grew into each position, it taught me skill sets, like art direction, photography direction, design work, all came through the jobs and the different things that I had. So it was interesting. It was like prophecy, right? Because here I wanted to be an advertising executive. I became one, but that was still only part of the journey.
So take me back to your childhood, where you were born and raised. What were the seeds that were planted that became this entrepreneurship, that became this vision and leading people and leading products? How did this happen?
Well, the book, When Doubt Became Design, if I can just hop on that, because that
Yeah,
really is part of
please.
the journey, is that, it's interesting when I hired an architectural editor for them to look at the overarching architecture of the book. And he said, Marty, this is really interesting. After he reviewed it, he said the first four chapters are written in one person. The rest of the book is written as a different person. He said it's not wrong, it's not right, it's just what it is. And what he didn't know, Joe, that 30 years ago, well, now it's probably 33 years ago, I sat down because I'd grown up in a very unstable home. I don't like to air dirty laundry. I think everything should be done in reserve. But the reality is, I grew up in a home that had abuse. I had it was very. My father died when I was 5. There was a lot of instability in there, and what at one point I couldn't live with these voices in my head. And I'm not talking about crazy psychotic
Sure.
voices, but the things that would bubble up in my relationships, right? The stuff would always bubble up. When you've been abused in some kind of way, trauma has its way of working its way into your life. So I was newly married. I had a few children. One night I decided to write it all down. I pulled out my computer and I started writing down these memories and these things that I had in my head. And interesting, it was 12 pages. I put them in a yellow folder. I stuck them away. I didn't write them to share them with anybody. I needed just to get it out of here.
Yeah.
And for 30 years, I held that yellow folder. It followed me. It was always in my peripheral. And 2 years ago, I thought I lost them. I've always kind of knew where they were, and I didn't see the yellow folder. I had moved, and I didn't see them. And it was interesting. I pulled them out. I pulled out. I pulled out a box. I found this yellow folder. A little relief came in. I sat down with a hot cup of coffee and I started reading it. And the number one thing that I realized when I read it was that man that was reading it 2 years ago was not the same person that wrote it 35 years ago or 33 years.
Wow.
It was a different person. And that was actually the inspiration of the book. That's why when he saw it, it was a different voice because it was written from it, like what I would say, a different man or a
Yeah.
different perspective. And so instability's always been there. And so when I was writing the book, I got to tell you, I wasn't sure where I was going with it. I just knew that this was where I had to go. And so as I wrote it, Joe, I I realized through these times that I always bridged or built a better foundation to move forward. Because to answer your question, I was 14 years old or 15 years old, and I lived in an unstable home. And actually, it's in the book. And what I did was I got tired of the instability. I got tired of the abuse. I got tired of all of that. And I went down into the basement and I found an old cherry desk. I pulled it into the room that I finally had by myself. I pushed all the clothes to one side and put this cherry desk in in my closet. Put a lamp on it, put a chair on it, and closed the door. And I practiced artwork.
Wow.
So that was actually the first time I really focused on stability over chaos, and that actually would turn me. I actually became one of the top art students in the school system that I came up in. I actually got accepted at one of the top art schools in the nation. I just didn't know how to go. I just didn't understand the path, and I just found my own path. But I always created stability out of chaos. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They have a situation and they find a better path towards it.
So, who's been that hero, that inspirational force that's allowed you to get your confidence to become who you are today?
Mm. Well, and, my father, like I said, my father died when I was 5. So inside the book, I actually write a chapter called it's called Borrowed Fathers, because when you don't have that male figure as a young man, you either go aimlessly through life, because I think mentorship um, and coaching and all of those things go along with being a father. So I found borrowed fathers in my life. So I would say that at different times in my life, it was like some male had stepped up. And the first one was my friend John's 2 doors down, his dad. And actually, in the book I wrote about it, it's about the Pinewood Derby, because that's what you did with your father.
Yeah.
And I would say that the way Mr. Deteen showed up in my life, he didn't, and even John, they didn't tell me what to do. They just supported me in what I was doing it. And then when I hit high school and became that art prodigy, whatever we want to call that, the artist, I found that a teacher had taken me under his wing, and I never even realized it. And he knew that I came from the home I came from, and he pushed me harder than I've ever been pushed before.
Wow.
And so there has always been borrowed fathers, as I call them, throughout my life. That is,
Yeah. So let me ask you this from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Who have you emulated? Who have you looked up to that's embodied the ideal of, which I love, the entrepreneur credo of, you're solving a problem and you're not going in for the money and all of those foundational elements. Who was that person that you emulated, that you looked up to?
I have to tell you, I didn't have one.
Okay.
Not from that standpoint. I've always been because I'm a creative. I've always been what I consider original, right? And I've always thought through or building structure going forward. And I have to tell you that I probably looked at a lot of different things, and I probably looked at more structural type of things. Like when it came down to designing brochures, I would tell you I had nobody that I really looked up to. Van Gogh, Velazquez, maybe some of the artists, they had shaped their times, and maybe that would have been the foundation for that. But as I went on to be an entrepreneur, eventually I owned a manufacturing facility. Joe, I didn't know anything about manufacturing
Yeah.
other than my ad agency, because I worked with manufacturers and learned how to read blueprints. So I think that path was set for me to be an originator. And I don't want to sound like like I'm a rabbi of one, right? I've always looked outside of me. I think that we learn from our hardships, and we say we go to the school of hard knocks. But I look now and I said, when does genius begin? Why are we afraid to say that we're smart, or we're geniuses in our own worlds because the true innovators, I don't think need the path forward. They develop the path forward, and I'm not so sure that they need that anchor. And I'm not saying I should or shouldn't. I'm not saying we could or couldn't. But for me, I think that I've always found a path forward based on necessity, because they say necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always done is I've always invented, whether it's inventing a product or inventing a path forward.
What was the first invention that you got a good response from that really fueled this desire to keep going?
Well, I mean, I remember sitting as a child and taking apart paper airplanes, or remember the old balsa airplanes with the
Yeah.
propellers and the rubber bands. I used to take things apart. I used to do those kind of things. And so I think that was the preface of eventually building a product um, that could be repeatable and scalable, that affected the education industry and the food industry of putting hot water hand washing stations where compliance said. And the reason I say all that is that it really wasn't about me designing it, or it wasn't about me winning awards. I think awards, Joe, are the evidence of the foundation you built is solid. I don't do things for the reward. The reward to me was seeing the product out in the field being used for many people's, as they are the hero of the story,
Yeah.
not me. So I think that's what a true entrepreneur does. They
Sure.
they want to make somebody else's life better.
So if you can meet any entrepreneur alive today or an inspirational figure, you can spend some time with them, have a lunch that might help you on your journey. Who would you love to talk to?
I know it's trendy, but there are some people that have for lean manufacturing. There's a lot of thought leaders in there. But if you don't look at today, I mean, if you could sit down with Einstein, like what a thinker, right? I think we do have these people in our times now. I mean, I don't want to look trendy or like, oh, that's just the famous thing to say. But who wouldn't want to sit down with Steve Jobs?
Yeah.
He was an innovator. Yeah, they want to rip him that he wasn't this great person, but that he wasn't put on the earth to be the great connector. He was there to change the world in many different ways. And Elon Musk, if you can't, I know that he's politically shaken right now, but the reality is that I don't know any other person that has created a team that can take a rocket and land it back down gently without it exploding, without it. I mean, those are amazing things that are
Yeah.
going on. Those are the true innovators. And so I think I like those are the type of people I'd love to sit down with
Yeah.
and learn from.
And they all have tremendous amounts of energy and drive. What is that for you every day? What is the drive, the energy for you to do your job at a high level, take care of your soul,
I
your
never want to be the biggest, but everything I've ever done, I want to be the best. If I'm going to be the electrician, I'm going to be the best electrician that I can be. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but I can only do as much as I know how to do. And if I don't have it within me, I think the genius part is I have to learn that I'm not the smartest person in every room and get people that surround myself. So for me, it's doing the absolute best work. I people will say that's controlling, or they'll lean towards, oh, that's perfectionism. But if you really look at the word perfection, it actually comes from the Greek word teleos. And that word teleos of perfection does not mean flawless. It actually means maturity. So I think for me, I love to mature in the things that I do, whether it's woodworking, painting, sculpture, creating a coaching program, creating a product. I just want it to be the best out there so people can enjoy it and use it.
So let's say you had a dream tonight. You ran into that young version of you, let's say 17, 18 years old, and you walk into a room and there's a film projector. You click play and a 60-second highlight reel of your life comes up. Is that young version going to believe that your life turned out this way?
Yes. I do believe that.
Yeah.
I think that when you get that unstoppable feeling, um, I think that's good momentum. And I don't think I ever had like blinders on from that standpoint. It's like doubt never crept in. Like doubt is a signal for us to fix something. And I've always believed that, where people, like holistically apply doubt, right? They doubt themselves, they doubt this, but typically it's situational, right? So I feel like in any situation, I can build past that no matter what it is. And I think that life is full of instability. I think it's, it's full of problems, it's full of issues. So I would say, yes, that younger Marty would say, yeah, go get him, Tiger, right? Go get him and succeed and be beyond. In fact, maybe I need to go a little bit further and think bigger,
Yeah.
yeah, than what I was thinking at the time.
Would you have any advice for that young version of you?
Back then, I would say listen more,
Yeah.
listen better, seek outside. Because, you do become an island at some point in your life. When you work corporate, you become an island of many. In entrepreneurship and solopreneurship, you became an island of yourself. And so that is where the true genius or creative is. So to be able to get outside of that and push it forward and use it, I think there are really no limits other than what we place on ourselves. I don't think I can do brain surgery. In fact, I probably could, Joe, but I wouldn't be the first person that I'd do it on. I'd clip that first one and you'd be shaking. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that one didn't work, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that we are given opportunities to improve and succeed.
So on that 60-second highlight reel, what are you the proudest of? What are you the happiest about?
Yeah. I would say, it's a tough one. After 40 years of business, or like, is it personal? I raised 7 children,
Yeah.
and like, it's a different world, right? I try not to mix the two because I think that's always a work in progress. I think that we are a work in progress. So, other than raising a family that I felt like really made impact of the world, um, I would say, in business, I would say that. Um, some of the greatest things I've ever done is just making a difference in people's lives, whether it's building a better culture or it's building a better product or getting outside ourselves and say, what, that's not sustainable. What can we do differently? Be willing to reinvent ourselves in many different ways. And I'm not so sure that answered your question, but that's
No, it did. It certainly did. So I want to dig in a little bit further here. I want to get to the real marrow in your bones. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. You run the perception that we have. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
hmm, that is that's a really good question.
Thank you.
What's my perception of me?
Yeah.
I'd say my perception of me is awareness. I like being aware of really who I am. And I think that did come from business. Let's talk about the word core value, right? We always talk about core values. We write them on the wall, we write them on our shirts, we write them on our shoes, but do we live it? Because a core value is really who you are, right? What is your value system? It's not who you want to become, it's not who you were, it's who you are. And that happened for me, like building through teams. Like if I had to build a team, I have to understand who I am. So the self perception is the person who listens, learns, and applies. Outside perception is they look at me as, oh, he's a self-contained man, he's a leader, he doesn't need any help. The reality is that we all need help. And my perception is that I'm only as good as the people around me sometimes, because we're not truly just islands. We are an accumulative. So I think the perception of me is one who wants to listen and learn and grow and change and be aware of where I'm going and what I'm doing.
So, having an adventurous spirit, I'm curious if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history, where are you going to go? What would you love to have seen with your own eyes?
Mm, there's so many to
Yeah,
choose from,
yeah,
right? If I was to go back and want to see something, I think history is ugly, right? History has its ugly way of of painting the perception of really what life is about. Because it seems like the hard things, we don't look at all the great things that happen. We look at all the hard things that happened. And so if I was to go back, I would have loved to set some with the master artists, maybe the Dalís
yeah,
like Van Gogh is very trendy. And I always try to stay away from trends, but it's always been in me
yeah.
to see the shaping of thought. How about watching the Sistine Chapel being painted? That would have been a little boring. But to sit down and talk with Michelangelo would have been a different story. So I would say for me, it would have been the shaping of art because art is an important part of our culture.
So, if anybody wants to get a copy of When Doubt Becomes Design, they want to reach out, they want to learn more about anything going on in your world, where's the best place to go?
It's to martinjwatts.com. martinjwatts.com. You can also find it on Amazon. But if you go there, you'll learn a little bit about why I did what I did. Um, and be able to purchase a book and reach out. I tell you, Joe, I love it when people reach out with questions. I like when people reach out for many different ways. Human connection is really important.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, we don't have enough of it. So, yeah, that's where you can reach out to me. And please leave a message.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. I will make sure to put this in the show notes. Martin, what a joy. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your energy, your time. Thank you so much, and best of luck with everything.
Well, I hope we achieved what you wanted to achieve. And I
Yes.
appreciate the time and the energy. And I loved how you approached it. And anything I can do to help, Joe, reach out if I can do anything to
I,
improve your life as well.
I certainly will. Thank you so much.